chapter. It's a kind of long chapter. We will see if we can finish it today. Some of it is part of autobiography only. So we can read through it. And interestingly, we don't have recording of half of the chapter in Swamiji's voice. So till that part, you'll have to tolerate our reading. So before we start, let's bring our hands in front of our hearts, gazing up at the point between the eyebrows, invoking the presence of God and Gurus here with us. Let's pray together, Divine Mother, Heavenly Father, Friend, Beloved God, Guru Preceptors, Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lahiri Mahashaya, Swami Shri Yukteswar Ji, Beloved Gurudev, Paramhansa Yogananda Ji, Saints and sages of all religions, dear friend and guide Swami Kriyananda, humbly we bow at thy feet. Great Masters, be with us here today. Help us to tune into thy consciousness, thy guidance. May we always live this life, constantly tuning into thy guidance. May we live in joy and more in word, even as we live and function in this world. We are thine. Be thou eternally ours. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. We will start with a chant, and in this chapter, Swamiji has written about the chant which Master had sung in one of his satsangs, which is "Oh God, Beautiful." So let us start listening to this chant today, and then we will meditate for a short while, and then read.
I do bow.
Janti, we can't hear the chant.
It's not started yet.
Okay, started briefly, then stopped. Okay.
Sorry, I'll start again, I think.
In the mountains thou art high, in the mountains thou art high, in the river thou art restless, in the river thou art restless, in the ocean
Sitting up straight, closing your eyes, gazing up at the point between the eyebrows. Tuning into this beautiful chant. This was originally, it is by Guru Nanak Ji, which was translated into English by our Guru Paramhansa Yogananda when he went to the US. Talks beautifully of God being everything. God is in the mountains, God is high. In the river, God is restless. In the ocean, He's grave. In the forest, He's green. For the serviceful, His service. For sorrowful, His sympathy. For the yogi, His bliss. Whatever we want from God, He is that. Whatever we see Him as, He is that. It's a beautiful chant. Let's tune into chant for next few minutes. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. So in the last chapter, we saw how Swamiji read the book Autobiography of a Yogi and then took the bus traveling day and night to reach Los Angeles, where he walks into Encinitas without knowing anything, not even knowing how to pronounce his guru's name, which was very different for him, Indian name. And he mispronounces it, and then comes to know that you can't just walk in. You can't even walk in without having read lessons. He wasn't even aware there were lessons. He just read and he just came. And but despite all these being told that you need to read lessons, you need to wait, you can't just walk in, you have to write in before, you need appointments. It so happened that he was ushered into the room of Master. And Master says, I met you because you had good karma, and also because Divine Mother told me to. And he is immediately accepted. He becomes a monk, and now he will be, he'll be staying at Mount Washington with all other monks and nuns. So we start this chapter. And as I mentioned, the recording is not there for almost half of this chapter. So we will have to read one by one. So starting chapter 70, Mount Washington Estates. Mount Washington in the Highland Park district of Los Angeles rises above that vast city like a guardian angel. Located not far from downtown, the mountain yet stands remote behind its succession of foothills. At the mountaintop, the sound of traffic in the busy streets below is hushed to a quiet hum. In this tranquil spot, the problems of mankind appear more susceptible of harmonious solution, though in the world, the very place seems to be not wholly of the world. Very interesting. Now, since we are reading and not listening to Swamiji's voice, maybe we can intercept and keep discussing also along the way. This is it. It just seems like this place is just waiting for a higher duty than what it was being used at that time. Though in this world, but the very place seems to be not wholly of the world. I mean, this is what is mentioned in Bhagavatam about Krishna, that he is in this world. The way he stands, it's like to remind us that live in this world, but not be in, belong completely, just be lost in this world. And that is what he also advised Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita. So this is a very important point for a yogi, for us aspiring yogis, that not completely be lost, be caught up with this world. So in this world, but not of this world. That's a very important. And this place kind of resonated with that. And though it was being used as a hotel, it didn't really, seem to belong there. So it is atop Mount Washington at 3880 San Rafael Avenue that the determined visitor, after braving the steep, winding access road, arrives at the international headquarters of Self Realization Fellowship. At the turn of the 20th century, Mount Washington Estates, as this property is also known, was a fashionable hotel. Wealthy people, desirous of escaping the strain and bustle of city life, went there to relax or to attend gala social events. Tournaments were held on the tennis courts, banquets, and colorful balls in the spacious lobby. Guests were brought up the steep mountainside to the hotel by cable car from Marmion Way, 1,000 feet below, where connection was made with a railroad from downtown Los Angeles. The City of Angels was much smaller then, some 1 lakh inhabitants. In time, the increasing popularity of the automobile and the city's inexorable engulfment of its surrounding orchards and farmlands induced Mount Washington's fashionable clientele to seek their recreation farther afield. Mount Washington Estates fell on hard times. The hotel closed its doors at last. Weeds began to grow out of widening cracks on the once famous tennis courts. The hotel, like an indigent but still proud aristocrat, continued to survey the world with smug condescension from its 12-acre domain. Its lofty mood, however, became increasingly difficult for it to sustain as, with the passing years, paint began peeling off the walls of the main building, the grounds lost their carefully tailored elegance, and on every side there appeared unmistakable signs of neglect. Alas, to such universal indifference are all brought who too pridefully oppose time's all leveling scythe. The busy world paid court to Mount Washington no longer. Probably, this was a kind of good because it was awaiting a better deal now. It was coming into a better destiny. Unlike most once fashionable resorts, however, pathetic in their memories of a heyday forever vanished, Mount Washington's erstwhile glory was but the prelude to a far more glorious role. Around the turn of the century, at the time when Mount Washington Estates had attained the height of their popularity as a resort, there was a young boy in India who, during periods of ecstatic meditation, caught glimpses of a mysterious mountaintop monastery in a distant land. The message conveyed by his enigmatic visions concerned the mission that he knew he was meant someday to fulfill, and that boy was Mukunda. He used to see this often in his vision, and also we read in the chapter Years in My Master's Hermitage, when one day Sri Yukteswar was giving some sermon on Bhagavad Gita, and Master was very much present there, but not really very involved. And at that time, Sri Yukteswar stops his sermon and says, you have to concentrate at what he says. No, I'm listening to you, Master. I am listening. I can repeat every word you say. He said, yes, you are, but not really. In your back of your mind, you are creating 3 buildings. They will come to fruition. That will happen. But right now, concentrate on what I'm saying. So he knew what he was seeing, because he was self-realized master, and he was Master's Mukunda's guru. And when Mukunda says, oh God, what can I do with a master like you? He says, you have given me the right to enter your mind. As a disciple, you allowed. So masters would never enter our life, or if only if we allow them. That's a free will he has given. The more we invite them, the more they will happily enter and guide our life and our thoughts. So this is a very important thing. So this was one of those three buildings that he had seen in. He was sitting and dreaming about, or probably seeing in his vision at that time. So here, Mukunda Lal Ghosh, later known to the world as Paramhansa Yogananda, was the son of a senior executive in the Bengal Nagpur Railway. As such, he faced the prospect of wealth and high worldly position upon growing up. But it was not this world that attracted him. From earliest childhood, he had longed for God as intensely as others long for human love or for worldly recognition. Mukunda's favorite pastime was visiting saints. Even as a little kid, he used to go visiting all the saints. And what is much more interesting is Chota Mahashaya. They often called him Little Sir, or literally, Little Great Minded One, treating him not as a child, but as their spiritual equal. Many, in quote, he says, as he was to tell me with an amused smile during his last years. Bracket closes. Many posed him deep questions or sought his advice on spiritual matters. Now, isn't that interesting? Throughout autobiography, when we read that book, it seems like, here is this young boy who's seeking to find God, and he's going looking for his guru. Who is his guru? And he's visiting saints. But this is an indication that even as a child, he was always received very respectfully by those very enlightened souls like Master Mahashaya, or the levitating saint Bhaduri Mahashaya. In that book, Autobiography of a Yogi, one day when Mukunda enters and some disciples who are downstairs, they say, no, he is meditating, you can't meet him. Bhaduri Mahashaya comes down and he says, this rule is not for Mukunda. Whenever he comes, allow him to come up. Because there was something, he was not, though he was projecting himself in that book as a regular seeker, he wasn't. And Swamiji later on also in this, he mentions that once Master told them that I killed Yogananda a long time ago. No one dwells in this body but God. So he was an avatar. He came and played a certain role. It's the Leela for them. This is basically to bring all those, as Lahiri Mahasaya had promised, that your son to his mother, your son will be an engine who will bring thousands to this path. So he was playing a Leela for us later disciples to come and follow him. So, okay, clearly this was no ordinary child. Though in his autobiography, Yogananda presents himself as unassumingly that the reader, unfamiliar with the intense preparation required for high yogic attainments, might draw the conclusion that anyone similarly placed might have reached the young yogi's spiritual attainments. He makes it look so simple. Soon after graduation from high school, Mukunda met his guru, the great Swami Sri Yukteswarji of Serampur, Bengal. At the feet of this great master, he attained in the amazingly short period of 6 months the high state of samadhi, or unconditioned oneness with God. His guru kept him in the ashram another 9.5 years while training him for his mission, the dissemination of yoga in the West. That was his mission, right? What was his mission? What was Yogananda's mission? Dissemination of yoga in the West. The West, Sri Yukteswar explained, is high in material attainments, but lacking in spiritual understanding. It is God's will that you play a role in teaching mankind the value of balancing the material with an inner spiritual life. That was his role. So once when Master had come to the West, somebody had asked him, is this a new religion? He said, no, this is a new expression of the truth. It's a new expression because we are in ascending Dwapar Yuga. West was, as it's mentioned, was very high in material achievements, but it lacked that spiritual, the inner life. And India was way ahead for that. So there has to be a balance where India learned to be more materialistic and West gains the spiritual aspect. So that was his mission. That is why he took this incarnation. In 1917, Mukunda, now a monk with the name Swami Yogananda, took the first outward step toward the fulfillment of his mission by founding a small school of boys in the village of Dihika, Bengal. In 1918, the Maharaja of Kasim Bazar graciously gave him the permission to transfer this fast growing school to the Kasim Bazar Palace in Ranchi, Bihar, where the school flourished, an institution offering education in the divine art of living along with the standard curriculum, made an instant appeal to parents and children alike. In the first year, enrollment applications reached 2,000, far more than the existing facilities could absorb. By the end of 2 years, the young yogi headmaster's educational theories were already beginning to have a marked impact on other educators. He was way ahead of his time. And what he all, even today, that is lacking in many, all these Western uh, schools. The concept of the schools that are based on the Western concept, which is, they learn various subjects curriculum, but now what is not taught is, as master writes, the art of living, how to live. That is not taught to the children. So these days we find kids, brilliant kids, but somehow they are not able to cope up with the stress. They are already stressed. They are already, there's so much depression even in school children, diabetes and all health related things, and more importantly depression and all that, is because they are not taught how to live. If that has been taught, Dalai Lama once said that if an 8-year-old kid is introduced to meditation, there wouldn't, in one generation we can eradicate all the problems of this world. So that is the importance of these inner, which is being completely ignored in today's competitive world. So dear as Yogananda's Ranchi school was to him, however, there was another broader mission for which the Lord was even now preparing him. In 1920, the youthful yogi was meditating one day when he had a vision. Thousands of Americans passed before him, gazing at him intently. It was, he knew, a divine message. The time had come for him to begin his life work in the West. And towards the end of his life, Swamiji had asked him once this question that, Master, all those people, those Americans you had seen in that vision, have they all come? Master said, yes, most of them. I'm just waiting for one or two more. So he knew, those were the friends who he met when he went there. And as it so happened that just before he left, a couple of final guys also came in. So he knew exactly when he was going to drop his body and go. He knew when his mission was ending. He knew who all were to come. He had seen everyone. And that also means he has seen each one of us too. The future disciple. It's not like once he leaves his body, no, he doesn't know. He's very much alive, more alive than us, actually. The very next day, he received an invitation to speak as India's delegate to an international congress of religious liberals being held that year in Boston, Massachusetts, under the auspices of the American Unitarian Association. All doors are open for you, Sri Yukteswar told him when he applied to his guru for instruction. Your words on yoga shall be heard in the West. Thus commanded, Yogananda accepted the invitation. See how it just fell into place. He sees this vision in his meditation. He feels that this seems to be a divine command. Immediately, he just, receives an invitation. How do they know who is Yogananda all the way from America? There was no social media at that time. There was no, not even proper phones at that time. How do they know who is Yogananda? He's just a young monk who has just started out from under his Guru's training. But these are the indications. Yet, though he had very strong indications where he sees these in the visions, then he gets this invitation. Yet he seeks his guru, asks him, "Should I go?" This is a very important lesson for us. I saw in my meditation, this seems right. And then, there are certain indications that feel like, right, I saw this and then this is falling in place. So we go ahead saying that, yeah, I received this. Just pause for a moment. Ask the guru. Is this really an indication? Or, sometimes it so happens that just what we want to happen starts happening and we feel, yeah, that is an indication. But it's still, even if it is, good to pause, ask the guru. And so he asked his guru. He is a master, he's Swami Yogananda. Yet he asked his guru, and when the guru said, all doors are open for you, and he also said, it is now or never. So, and he says, your words will be accepted. Now, once he got that yes from the guru, he goes ahead. In America, he found many people hungry for India's spiritual teachings and for the liberating techniques of yoga. Accordingly, he stayed on in Boston, where for 3 years he taught and lectured. Gradually, he accustomed himself to the American culture and studied how he might reach past his listeners' preconceptions to their very hearts. It wasn't easy, right? He had gone to here was this brown skinned person. Not many of them Indians. Now we have a lot of Indians living there. In those days, there weren't Indians, many Indians in flowing hair and in an ochre robe, and he's coming and saying something completely different from what the churches have been saying so far. So he just didn't go there and start preaching. He studied. He says he studied how he might reach past all of us have our own baggages. We all think we know a lot. So how he could penetrate through that to their very hearts, he says. Once you touch the heart, it is received, right? In 1923, he began a series of lectures and classes in major American cities. His success everywhere was extraordinary. Crowds flocked to him in unprecedented numbers, sometimes queuing up for blocks to get in. Unlike most other teachers from India, he never tried to impose his own country's cultural modes on Americans. But sought rather to show Americans how to spiritualize their own culture. Now, again, this is very important. I will teach you, listen to me. That wasn't the attitude he came in. No, I know more than you, so listen to us. No, me, no. He went in saying that, he was not imposing something completely new. What they already had, he just taught them how to spiritualize that. And that is why it was they were open to his suggestions, right? Dynamically and with contagious joy, he set out to persuade minds that were steeped in the virtues of down-to-earth practicality, that the most practical course of all is to seek God. His magnetism was irresistible. On January 25th, 1927, in Washington, D.C., after a lecture attended by 5,000 people, the Washington Post reported the Swami has broken all the records for sustained interest. For some time, a famous photographer kept a life-size photograph of the master on the street outside his shop. President Calvin Coolidge received the Swami at the White House. In New York's famous Carnegie Hall, on 18th April 1926, the master held a crowd of 3,000 spellbound for an hour and a half, repeating with him the simple chant, "Oh God, beautiful," which he had translated from the original Hindi of Guru Nanak. That night, many in his audience found themselves transported to a state of divine ecstasy. This also Master says that, when he had asked one of the disciples, should I chant? And that disciple said, no, Master, don't do that. Harmonium, nobody understands harmonium here. And, this is all strange chanting. We don't want people throwing tomatoes at us, So he said, no, that will not happen. And he started chanting 1.5 hours. Oh God, beautiful. Master said that That day, a lot of miracles happened, a lot of healing happened. Just one chant repeated again and again. People singing, 3,000 people in that hall singing with him. A lot of people got transformed. A lot of changes happened that day. In 1924, Swami Yogananda toured westward across the continent. As he taught and lectured, countless thousands found their lives transformed, not by his words alone, but by his magnetic love and the sheer radiance of his inner joy. Louis Royston, an elderly disciple who first met him during those early years, described him to me as a man so alive with divine joy that he sometimes actually came running out onto the lecture platform, his long hair streaming out behind him, his orange robe flapping about his body as if with kindred enthusiasm. "How is everybody?" he would cry. "Awake and ready," came the eager response, in which he led them. "How feels everybody?" Again the shout, "Awake and ready." Only in such a charged atmosphere was he willing to talk about God, whom he described as the most dynamic, joy inspiring reality in the universe. Dry theoretical lectures were not for him. He had not come to America to philosophize, but to awaken in people an ardent love for God and an urgent longing to know Him. The forceful, inspiring personality of this teacher from India utterly captivated his audience. I mean, just close your eyes and visualize this. A young Yogananda, his long hair streaming behind him, comes running onto the stage and shouts. I mean, visualize, you can hear his voice also, a very powerful voice. "How is everybody?" And then he makes them say, "Awake and ready." How feels everybody? Awake and ready. I mean, this is how I think we should all get up in the morning. When we get out of the bed, especially now, it's so cold. It's getting up itself is such a difficult thing. How is everybody? How feels everybody? As we sit down to meditate, that enthusiasm. I want to know God. I want to meet my Guru. He says, only in that charged atmosphere was he willing to talk of God. He wouldn't otherwise talk it. It wasn't a dull, really going on and on. He wanted people there, very much there, listening to him, understanding what he was saying. Because, he says, the most dynamic, joy-inspiring reality in the universe is God. How can we put any less energy? So, from tomorrow, this should be our takeaway. Tomorrow morning, as we get out of the bed, visualize Master saying this to us. How is everybody? How feels everybody? Awake and ready. And then, start our energization exercises and sitting down to meditate, to meet Master, to meet God. We have to meet halfway. Master said, don't just sit and start meditating, waiting for joy to come, meet it halfway. Sit joyfully to meditate. Meet, you should be in bliss. You want to meet bliss, sit in bliss. Meet God halfway. So, okay. So he says, Louis Royston told me a charming little story from Yogananda's 1927 visit to Washington, D.C. There, I don't know how to do MME, Amelita Galli-Curci, the world-renowned opera singer, became his disciple. At this time, Galli-Curci had reached the pinnacle of her own extraordinary fame. One evening, while singing before a packed concert hall, she spotted her guru seated in the balcony. Interrupting the performance, she pulled out a handkerchief and waved it eagerly in his direction. The Swami, in his turn, rose and waved back at her. The audience, finally seeing whose presence it was that had interrupted the program, broke into enthusiastic cheers and applause, sustaining the acclamation for several minutes. What a beautiful sight it would have been. What a wonderful feeling that was. I mean, everyone who was present there. One reason for the almost overwhelming response the master received everywhere was that, unlike most public speakers, he never looked upon his audience as nameless crowds. even when they numbered many thousands. He was amazingly sensitive to each listener as an individual. This is so important. Often he would address himself to the specific needs of a single member of his audience. I myself sometimes had the experience of hearing him during the course of a public lecture address briefly some private difficulty of my own. When I thanked him mentally, he glanced smilingly at me before continuing his discourse. In fact, Swamiji himself also used to do that. He said, when I would go for any talks, I mean, these are all what he learned from his guru. And we are in this path. This is not something to tell us what master was doing, but what we should do. So, especially, some of us who are training to be, meditation teachers, STT students, it is not what I know and I want to tell them, but what do they want? What do they need? So Swamiji always used to say, I mean, he would have prepared something to talk about, but he would go into a room and he would try to tune into the audience. What do they want to hear today? Each one. So that is how once he tuned into that, he said that, many times people would come and say, this is something that it was almost like you were talking to me. It was because he tuned into them. As Masters, he has written, Master looked upon the audience not as nameless crowds, but even they numbered many thousands, but as individuals. What do they want? What do they need for their spiritual growth? Mr. Oliver Rogers, later brother Devananda, an older man who entered Mount Washington as a monk a year or two after me, once told the master in my presence, I heard you lecture 25 years ago at Symphony Hall in Boston. Through the years, since then, I often wondered where you were. I suppose it was my karma that I had to see God first in other ways, but the compelling inspiration behind my search was always that evening with you in Symphony Hall. It was strange too, Mr. Rogers continued reflectively. That huge hall was completely packed, yet through your entire lecture, you kept your eyes fixed on me. I remember, replied the master with a quiet smile. This is actually very strange, no? I mean, Symphony Hall, there must have been some thousands of them. And it is not possible that master was only looking at Rogers and would have ignored everybody else. It's not possible. What does this mean? It means that energetically he was touching him. He was touching everyone energetically there. Everybody felt him, that connection with master, that he was looking at me. It is like, when we read about the Krishna Ras Leela, at some point, they say that every gopi who was dancing, Krishna was dancing with her, whereas Krishna was actually in the center. But each one, he was with everyone. Energetically, he was touching everyone. He was with everyone. That is what it means. So here again, because otherwise it just doesn't make any sense that out of thousands of people in that room, he just looks at one person. I mean, that is not how a public speaker does. They are always looking at all of them. But he was energetically touching each one of them. That's what it means. So above all, during every public lecture, Swami Yogananda sought souls who were spiritually ready to devote their lives to God. As he often put it, I prefer a soul to a crowd, though I love crowds of souls. That's so beautiful. So everywhere he was seeking those who were his own. So every talk, he was always seeking who is that one soul, even one in that thousands who belonged, who belonged to this path. During his transcontinental tour in 1924, many would have been thrilled for Swami Yogananda to make his home in their cities. To every such invitation, however, he replied, my soul calls me to Los Angeles. Years later, a guest at Mount Washington asked him, "Which do you consider the most spiritual place in America?" "I have always considered Los Angeles the Benares of America," the master replied. To Los Angeles he came. People flocked to his lectures in unprecedented numbers, even for that city, noted as it is for its interest in material matters spiritual. Weeks passed in unceasing public service, and then he informed his delighted students that he planned to establish his headquarters in this city. Numerous properties were shown him, none corresponded to the visions he had received in India, however. He knew what he was looking for, right? He continued his search. In January 1925, he was out driving one day with 2 or 3 students, including Arthur Cometer, a young man who, with Ralph, another student, had chauffeured the master across America. They drove up winding Mount Washington Drive. As they passed Mount Washington Estates, the master cried out, "Stop the car! You can't go in there," his companions protested. "That's private property." But Yogananda was not to be dissuaded. He entered the spacious grounds and strolled about in silence. At last, holding onto the railing above the tennis courts, he exclaimed quietly, "This place feels like home." As it turned out, the property had recently been put up for sale. There were other people already who wanted to buy it, but Yogananda knew it was destined to be his. So certain was he, in fact, that he invited all his students in Southern California to a dedication ceremony on the still unpurchased land. During a speech that day, he informed them, "This place is yours." He was confident because he had seen it. He had seen the visions. He had his guru say that, that will come, that all the 3 buildings will come. So he knew this was his. The price of the property was $65,000. The master was on the very point of signing the purchase agreement when his hand froze into immobility. "God held my hand from signing," he told me years later, "because he wanted me to have the property for less money." So tuning into God that, it was just, there was a communication there. A few days afterwards, another real estate agent was found who agreed to negotiate terms. The seller consented to come down to $45,000, provided that the sum was paid in full at the time of purchase, and that the day be set no later than 3 months from the day Yogananda signed the agreement. The price, though excellent, represented a lot of money, particularly in those days when the dollar had a much higher value than it has today. When Yogananda's students learned that he had only 3 months to raise the entire sum, their interests waned noticeably. One lady exclaimed in dismay, "Why, it would take you 20 years to raise that much money." And look at the reply. 20 years, replied the master, for those who think 20 years. 20 months for those who think 20 months. And 3 months for those who think 3 months. He, in that interaction, he showed the power of mind. What we affirm, which will come to pass. What we affirm, hold very strongly and feel in our heart, will come to pass. So it's very, very important to, the moment, many of us do that, something that seems unsurmountable, we immediately put it off saying, "Ye to nahi hoga." So this is something, I think we can write it in front of us and keep reminding ourselves. 20 years for those who think 20 years, 20 months for those who think 20 months, 3 months for those who think 3 months. He did, in fact, acquire the money in 3 months. The story of how he did it illustrates wonderfully the power of faith. There was a student of the Swamis, a Mrs. Ross Clark, whose husband some months previously had contracted double pneumonia. The man's doctors had said he couldn't live. "Oh yes, he will live," declared the master. When Mrs. Clark turned to him for help. Going to her husband's bedside, he had sat there and prayed deeply. The man was cured. Thus it was that Mrs. Clark learned of the master's dilemma. She told him, "You saved my husband's life. I want to help you. Would you accept a loan of $25,000 without interest for 3 years?" Would he? Other money, he told me, began pouring in from other centers across the country. Soon we had another $15, making $40, for $15,000, making $40,000 in all. But the final purchase date was approaching, and we still lacked $5,000 of the total amount. I wrote Mrs. Clark again to see if she could help us with this amount. Regretfully, she answered, I have done all I can. I thanked her once again for the enormous help she had given already. But where was that help going to come from? At last, just one day remained. The situation was desperate. I mean, imagine this. So, Master had seen right from his childhood that this place, when he saw, he knew, yeah, I have seen this place. This is going to happen. His guru has said, yes, it is going to happen. But it didn't come easy. It wasn't like he just had to sit back and it landed in his lap. He had to struggle for it. He had to work for it. I mean, we have to understand this. Just because some obstacles come, you can't just give up on something saying, no, I think, the God, our guru doesn't want me to have this, or God doesn't want me to have this. Of course, God wanted to have it. Right from childhood, he has been seeing that. But it didn't come to him. He had to work at it. Master, even a master had to work to get it. Master chuckled. I think Divine Mother likes to keep my life interesting. I happened to be staying in the home of someone who was rich but insincere. He could easily have helped us had he been so inclined. But he made no move to do so. I was battling with God. How do you plan to give me that money before noon tomorrow? Everything will be all right, my host said soothingly. Why do you say that? I demanded. I knew the money would come, but God needs human instruments. And this man had shown no interest in serving the work in this capacity. The man left the room. Just then, a gust of wind turned my face towards the telephone. A gust of wind. What is it? Om. I mean, you are in a room. There is no gust of wind that comes in the room. Om blows. There, I saw the face of Miss Trask, a lady who had come to me twice for interviews. A voice said, call her. I did so at once and explained my predicament to her. After a pause, she said, somebody just the other day returned a loan I made him years ago. I never expected to get it back. See how it works. It was for $5,000. Yes, you may have it. Silently, I offered a prayer of thanks. Please, I urged her, be at Mount Washington Estates tomorrow before noon. She promised to come. But by noon the next day, she hadn't yet arrived. Again, God is keeping it very interesting. It's like climax and anticlimax happening all the time. Several prospective buyers were waiting like wolves. One of them was telling everyone that he planned to turn the place into a movie school. But the seller announced, we will wait the rest of the day. Minutes later, Miss Trask arrived. The drama was over. We paid the full purchase price and Mount Washington was ours. Thus was founded the international headquarters of Self-Realization Fellowship, the institution through which Paramahansa Yogananda disseminated his yoga teachings throughout the world. When I came to the Master in 1948, Mount Washington Estates was a monastery. At first, however, he had planned to make it a how-to-live school similar to his well-known institution in India because his hopes for spiritualizing the West included an all-round education for the young. So he always had that thing that it should start when when infant, small children. So they grow up with it, those principles and ethics. He soon realized, however, that his education dreams for this country would have to wait until enough grown-ups were converted to his ideals. So he first had to work on the grown-ups. Even they didn't know. I mean, in India it is okay because it is like part of the culture of India, for tradition of India. Years, thousands of years that has been it. So it is in the land. But there, people, it was a very materialistic world. So he had to first convert inspire the adults before he could take it to their children. So he soon realized, however, his educational dream for this country would have to wait until enough grown-ups were converted to his ideals Only then could there be properly trained teachers and enough parents willing to send their children to his schools. Soon, therefore, Mount Washington became a residential center for adults desirous of devoting their lives to God. In 1925, though many Americans derived inspiration from Yogananda's message, relatively few were ready to give their entire lives to the spiritual search. So they were just inspired, but they didn't want to completely change the way they were. Even in India, so Lord Krishna stated in the Bhagavad Gita, out of 1,000, one seeks me, and out of 1,000 who seeks me, one fully knows me. Swami Shankaracharya, also known simply as Swami Shankara, Acharya means teacher, once remarked, childhood is busy with playthings, youth is busy with romance and family, old age is busy with sickness and worries. Where is the man who is busy with God? Here, in the materialistic West, few indeed were willing to spare the time for deep meditation. By once they came, many left, few remained. The master also said that, the doors of Mount Washington was like a hotel. People came in and went out. Even when master was in body, they didn't realize the importance. Okay, we still have some time. Yogananda might have compromised his high standards and made it easier for many more to stay, but he never would do so. And by once they did come, among whom were a growing number of deeply seeking souls. He was fine with it. He didn't want thousands if they are not sincere seekers. So he was fine. Once or two's coming in, but he didn't compromise because these are deep sacred teachings. It can't be taken so lightly. Slowly, a monastic order developed in time to achieve such a high spiritual caliber as I have seen nowhere else, not even in India. For some years, Swami Yogananda continued to tour the country, lecturing, teaching, and attracting to his work a gradually growing band of dedicated disciples. At last, he felt guided by God to end his spiritual campaigns, as he called them, and return to Mount Washington to devote his time to training the souls he had sent there. There now began for him and his little band a period of severe testing. During his previous years of public teaching, all the money he had sent home had, as things turned out, been spent, often not wisely. No doubt, those in charge had imagined the supply would never run out. To replenish the depleted bank account, the master might have gone out campaigning again, but he felt that God now wanted him to aim out at Mount Washington, and he obeyed the divine summons unflinchingly. So this is very important that the bank accounts were empty. The people had not spent it wisely, and we also know that some people he had trusted also betrayed him. So there was no money, and he could have gone out again campaigning and could have brought it all again, but he didn't do it because what he did, that is the difference between what most of us would do versus what a master does. Master would only do what God tells him to do, not what I want to do. What is the right, because that seemed logical that he should go back again and earn all that money, but he felt God now wanted him at Mount Washington, and he obeyed the divine summons unflinchingly. And they faced a lot of hardship. He and his little group planted tomatoes on the hillside. For months, their diet consisted of raw tomatoes, stewed tomatoes, fried tomatoes, baked tomatoes, tomato soup. They found that with a little culinary imagination, even this drastically limited fare could be pleasantly varied. With the passing years, more and more students around the country realized that what the master had brought them was far more than an adjunct to the church teachings with which they had grown up. It was a complete spiritual path in itself. He always encouraged the students to remain loyal to their own churches if they so desired. So he didn't force anyone that, completely, because then the resistance will come, and he was in a new country, so he had to also be careful about all that. So, and it wasn't a cult. This was not what he was teaching. So he was like teaching them to spiritualize their life. So even if they had their own church, it's okay, but spiritualize your, find God, go beyond just those scriptures. Increasing numbers of them, however, as they practiced his teachings, began to feel that his work was all the church they needed, because what he was giving was experience of God. It wasn't just some sermons and what the scriptures are saying, but experiencing. And that is when they realize that that is all that one needs, right? To know God. Thus, his work developed not by missionary tactics of conversion, but by his students' own personal experience of the efficacy of his teachings. More and more, those whose worldly responsibilities prevented them from entering his monastery began to unite together in their own towns to form self realization fellowship centers. Lessons were compiled at Mount Washington from his teachings and writings and sent to devoted students around the country, eventually reaching students throughout the world. By 1935, the work was firmly established and flourishing. So I think we can stop here. It's 8:27. We can continue. This is a beautiful chapter. So the
Very
next
nice. Oh.
amazing.